Da da da! What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I have to admit today, I have been enjoying the content, enjoying the lessons, being able to make a little bit of headway for myself, where yesterday I might have been a little bit frazzled in my understandings, a little bit frazzled because of my own, what's the word? The opposite of hesitant, anxious, my anxiousness that I make rash decisions quite often. I don't take my time. I run in my emotions. It's part of my nature. And right, lots of times we can jump into the mix of things, and sometimes it can serve us well. Sometimes it can be a whole lot of doo doo. Now, saying, that it can serve us well, lots of times it's in that heroism sometimes, that instant of not thinking, because who's going to throw themselves in front of a subway to save a dog or a small child in their right minds, because of in our own lives we're so in our own self-preservation. But in those moments where those emotions hit us, right, that we do jump into action. And like I said, it could serve well. That person that you jumped in front of the subway for could be the person who cures cancer, or is that diplomat that finally makes that crack that allows us to better get along with our neighbors in other countries. And we could say goodbye to some of those difficulties and those conflicts that we have, right? We're not Neanderthals anymore, but pretty soon we're not going to be Homo sapiens anymore. We are moving fast in our evolution, and we have to do a little bit of catch up going on, because this world is changing faster than we're changing. And that's the truth. I see it just in because I'm in social media, right? Like, I'm on these platforms every day, and I follow the content out there, and I'm a big believer in innovation. And just in some of those topics that I love, like in archaeology, the different discoveries going on, the way they're using sonar now to find cities in the Amazon, and pyramids in the desert. Like, we are reaching so far back into our own history that it's absolutely amazing that even without language, we leave these messages. We leave our story behind. Each one of us has that opportunity. When I first came on these platforms, I thought, Cindy, why? Right? You're going into retirement now, right? You're going to be in your 60s. You're going to be thinking about your retirement, not being a entrepreneur, not working with the entrepreneurs, right? Not delving the way that I'm delving. But with some of the lessons that come across your path, the way it impacts us, and we got this word influence this week, and we're going to work with this word all week. And I am influenced. As a highly sensitive, as an empath, I can say I'm fairly highly influenced, very easily influenced. And yet here I am amidst all these different perspectives, right? All these different political ideas, religious ideas, spiritual ideas, intellectual, scientific, off in the universe. Oh my goodness, you could just go on and on and on and on, right? And each one of these aspects is moving so fast now, so fast. And you know, you beat yourself up because you can't really get a good grasp on it because things are changing so fast. Soon as you do get a grasp, it's sometimes irrelevant now, right? It's like an old Atari game, right? It's just right. Maybe Atari is. I know it's collectible, right? The collectible scene, right? But you know what I mean? That things do change, and we beat ourselves up because we find those comforts and we find those interests and we find those things that we love, and that was what we were targeting. You know what I mean? That's because we're always wondering, what's your purpose, what's your mission and stuff. Well, it's when you've gotten to that point where it's not necessarily a ceiling that you're hitting or anything, but you're not absorbing the same way, right? You're not expanding away from these things that you're not necessarily compulsed about, but super interested. And sometimes you don't know why, sometimes you do know why. And for myself, it is in having some of those answers, you know, come across my path now my entire life. If I had had an inkling of any of these topics that we have been talking about, what we're on our 44th word, and we got the 44th word as influence. Like, if any of this content had come across my path at a young age, like say my teenage years, right? Or just in my everyday, day to day through my parentage and that influence that we get from our guardianship, or, in those early years of school. Mind you, I didn't start school until I think I was almost 7 years old when I started school. I never went to kindergarten, and I went straight into grade one. By the time I was grade one, I was already reading and writing. It was funny because in that influence, maybe this is it's more leading, but that's just as good a place as any in those first years of schools. I was reading before I started school. I think I was even writing before I went to school. We're going right, a little bit of trauma, a little bit of disinterest in my own movement at such a young age, right? That I just didn't pay attention, right? Or I was paying attention and even in those young years and that hypervigilance for my own safety that I did find it hard to absorb things. But in those young years I was already reading, and they put me in a special testing group, and they were teaching us how to read and write through the sound of the alphabet rather than A, B, C, D. It was Abbas, right? It was the sound of the letter. And that's how we were being taught to read and write. I don't know if they just didn't realize that I had already known how to read and write a little bit, by the time I had entered school. But it really truly did mess me up. And when that year was over and I was put into regular class, I actually failed grade two. Grade grade two. I do believe it was grade two that I failed in. And so after graduating school, I was almost 19 years old by the time I graduated high school. And in that you find that influence, because these are the things that impact you. And it slowed me down because I took it as a right, that special class, that person that was held behind, right? You know, these things that influence start at a very young age, and those are just the cornerstones that by the time we get into school, we have already got these cornerstones set in place, and it's so easy to be broken, disillusioned, isolated for sure. And these are happening because of our perceptions and the lessons and the understandings that we have in the moments, and then we're traumatized by something that's being introduced differently, right? We are constantly being influenced, like just even in the social media and commercials on TV, we're being influenced. Me as a teenager, now here's this is a good one. This idea of makeup, being in social media and being in front of the camera now in social media and having a voice, right? Being that person who is learning to have a presence at some point, possibly on stage. Maybe you'll see me in a TEDx talk. Maybe you'll see me hanging out with Tony Robbins, or right, having meetings with some of these thought leaders and hashing out ideas on right how to make the world a better place. I never went out of the house, not even to the corner store. We're talking well into my 50s, without putting the makeup on, without putting the liquid makeup on, the face powder, right? The blush, the lipstick. Wouldn't even leave the house to the corner store. That's how self conscious I was of my appearance in that influence. you know, like I said, I woke up to these ideas very late. And I do believe by the time I was 60, at the very least, I stopped wearing makeup completely. And I'm in front of the camera. I'm right. I have my podcasts and my live shows, and I share my adventures, and I share the inside, but I'm sharing the outside too. And I'm not wearing any makeup. That girl whose limiting beliefs, who felt that she wasn't good enough, attractive enough, that I had to cover up my flaws, right? With an inch of makeup. And that came from the influence of, well, commercials on TV, people who are trying to sell their products. Sometimes it's the other girls, right? In who you're comparing yourself when you're at school, right? You're feeling your way around, but also in that idea of feeling around, right? You're going through that puberty. So again, you're looking at attracting that partner and those relationships, right? That we naturally are drawn into. And all of these things influence us. All of these things influence us, but they impact us too in those experiences. And sometimes being highly sensitive and being empathic, right? We can tend to take things personally. We do, because it's not just what other people are influencing on us. We influence ourselves in our limiting beliefs. We pick up those batons and whatever anybody else has projected on us, right? We don't even need them to hang around with us, because we'll just pick up that baton and we'll do it to ourselves. We'll check ourselves. We are overseeing ourselves. We are self-parenting ourselves, right? Now you look at that mix, and when I went into that, I'm going, oh my goodness, like, oh, this is terrible, terrible, terrible. But by the end of it, I'm talking about self-parenting, right? Because that's where the choices lay, right? It's in our choices of who we want to create, in creating that best human being we possibly can, in creating that life for ourselves that we desire, or we feel that we deserve, or we're feeling like we're called to show up for. And we're uncomfortable in that. Well, we still have that choice to remain comfortable in that, meaning not stretching outside of ourselves, and right, moving towards those things that will make a difference, even though it's probably not going to be fun. It's probably not going to be easy. In fact, it's probably going to be quite frustrating or scary, right? Or scary, very hard. I get it, right? I've been at this for 10 years, and those lessons are slowly, slowly absorbing into my system. But they're absorbing into my system. You know, I can cry and whine and complain that I didn't wake up to these ideas sooner, that I had wasted my life. But part of me showing up here, fresh like a loaf of bread, is to show you that it's never too late, right? And that it can be done, that it can be done. And, you know, it seems impossible sometimes because, I did start so late in the game, but it was because of my choices, right? It was because of that influence that I allowed to come into my vicinity as somebody who controls what comes into their vicinity, that I got to choose. I made some choices. I got to choose, and I dabbled in a lot of stuff, right? Because I wanted to feel what was right for me. And I understand, right? I resonate with a lot of unique, different ideas, but it's the characters, it's the humans, right? It's that partnership that I admire, that I see out there, that I so want for myself, and maybe at the same time recognize that I also have a relationship and a responsibility and accountability in that self parenting, in that choice making for myself, in what's going to be allowed to influence me, right? Each one of us. And we get influenced by a lot of things, but you know what? Sometimes you stumble across a lesson that serves you well. Oh my goodness. I would not want to be spending 20 minutes to half an hour every single day before my live shows fixing my makeup and fixing my hair, right? That would be a real bummer. That would make me want to go back behind the camera. And not only that, it builds up my confidence, right? The way that I feel it myself, the way I think, oh my goodness, you were such a silly girl, Cindy, right? Was that how self-conscious you were? Is that how low in your self-esteem that you didn't feel your worth because you tagged it to what you looked like? That all that magnificent that you might have been able to offer up, right? Like you said, don't cry over spilt milk. I came in when I came in, and I'm gonna tread that water, but it could have been a different story. Like I said, if that influence had come across my path, that it had offered up a little tidbit of a inkling of an answer to any of these very important questions that I had asked myself my entire life and been totally oblivious to to the possibilities that were right in front of me, literally right in front of me. It could have been a different story. So better late than never, and the lesson is it's never too late, right? And I'll be the example in creating the best human being that I possibly can, that I can get it done, that I can be that evidence, that I could be the influence for somebody else just by being that evidence, just by being that person who just keeps moving forward and just uses her own senses in the choices that she makes and the experiences that she has, right? I'm picking what influences me. And, I tend to look more at an individual basis these days rather than those large groups, like when I was a young teenager, madly in love with the Osmond brothers, right? Or the Jackson Five, and right? These big, big, big groups and being part of these big, big, big fan clubs and stuff. That isn't necessary because it was always Donny Osmond, right? I could have just taken that lesson in, and I'm sure I did. But oh my goodness. I'm just thinking, and you can look at a lot of these big stars and you can see those networks, right? You can see those fan clubs. You can see the followers and I don't know, the camaraderie, I guess, and the journeys. Isn't that what it is? You're finding those commonalities and you're moving along, and those people that are in the same fields or have the same interests as you, and you're allowing that to rub off on you. That's influence, but maybe that's a conversation for tomorrow. You guys, I'm going to leave it at that. That's my good cheer. We got the word influence this week. I will be back tomorrow. There was a little bit of influence. There was actually some really good things that came across my path. I did write them down, but of course, as usual, right? Those notes are just from one page to the next. If you guys don't use doodlers, they're the most amazing things. I keep doodlers like school doodle books in front of me, and I just turn the page and we start afresh, all brand new. They each one usually lasts me 3 weeks to a month, and I do get a lot of use out of them, 100%. Okay, you guys, I'm bagged. That's my good cheer. We'll see you tomorrow.